Hi, my name is Casey Arriaga. I am an author and clinician here at Windmill Wellness Ranch, a treatment center for addiction and mental health disorders. Going to treatment is a really tough decision, and usually it's made in the middle of a crisis for the person who is needing the treatment and also for the family members. Once that person gets settled down to treatment, people start to settle down. They start to think like, okay, maybe we're going to be okay. And then give it 24, 48 hours, a week on the outside. Everyone starts to worry again. What happens after treatment? And that's actually a really important question to ask, because the fact is there are some really big mistakes that a lot of people make right after treatment that can make the difference between success and failure. So the biggest mistake we see people make right after treatment is that they stop doing the work. What do we mean by that? So the work that you learn in treatment is not always work. Sometimes it's learning new interpersonal relationships, it's learning how to communicate, it's learning what's going on inside of you. But we're always going to recommend that you want to continue that. It's also the work of, say, going to meetings, connecting with people that way, connecting with yourself that way. If you're doing 12-step recovery, you might be connecting with a higher power, your own personal spirituality. And then when we get out of treatment, it's easy to leave that stuff in the parking lot and just say like, well, do I really need to do all of that? Like, how long do I need to keep this up? And the reality is you need to keep it up for as long as you want to keep getting those good results. It's easy to let those things fall off, but that is the kind of thing that trips people up more than really anything else. I see that's also true for family members. Sometimes family members say, okay, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to support my loved one. They may go to some family recovery fellowship meetings like Smart Recovery Family and Friends or Al-Anon. And then their loved one gets out of treatment. They're like, okay, well, you're done. I'm done. Great, you're out of treatment. I don't need to work anymore. And then family members start to drift into some of their own patterns. And unfortunately, those patterns can start to interlock between the old patterns as the family members, the old patterns for the person that had to go into treatment, and then all of a sudden they start interacting, maybe bickering in the same ways or falling into familiar, even codependent patterns. And then someone looks around one day and says, wow, how do we end up right back where we started? Well, it's because people stopped doing the work. So a second big mistake that we see is that people get out of treatment and they forget that addiction or other mental health conditions are in fact medical conditions, so they don't follow with medical providers. So this will lead to one really big thing that happens is people drift off their medications. And again, at Windmill, we are not looking to send people out with a raft of medications, big bag or box of things you need to take for the rest of your life. But what we do prescribe is prescribed for a very good reason. So if you start going off of that, you can start to find a lot of that progress that was made in treatment starts to drift away as well. Now, as a bit of reassurance, you may not need to take those medications forever, but that decision should be made together with a prescriber, not just because you forgot to go to an appointment. So the third really big mistake that I often see is that people let go of some of those personal connections that they made in treatment that were actually the basis of recovery. A lot of people don't recognize that, although it's become a common saying now within the field is that the opposite of addiction is connection. I'm going to say that's actually true of any mental health disorder. Some of the things that we associate with anxiety and depression, some of those symptoms may actually be the result of disconnecting from other people. And we know that addiction, substance use disorder, pushes people away from each other. Even if you're surrounded by friends and family, you don't feel connected to them. Well, in treatment, that starts to turn around. You start to form a community. That could be personal one-on-one relationships. It could be connecting with a group, feeling like you're part of something for the first time in a long time. And it's easy to get out of treatment, to start to isolate again, to start to drift away from the meetings, to not make or answer phone calls or texts from other people that you met in treatment, to let go of that sponsorship or mentorship that you may have found in recovery fellowships. And as a result, that lack of connection could lead to anxiety, depression, and a much higher risk of relapse into any kind of mental health condition, including and especially addiction. Nobody wants to see a relapse after treatment, and the fact is it is preventable. If you do the things that you learned in treatment, you won't have the same problems. And recognize that relapse is often a process. We drop one thing or drop another thing, drop a third thing that was helping us in treatment, we become more and more vulnerable. But if you can catch that process, recognize what's happening, and stick with the things that were helping you in the first place, you can have enormous success after treatment.